Welcome to the Productive Introvert Community Podcast, helping ambitious introverts who feel deep down that they can add more value to the world to really thrive in their work. I'm Mariela Franker, and I'll be sharing what I'm learning as an introverted entrepreneur, a natural productivity coach, and a mom while I build my business online and take care of my family and myself. In this podcast, you'll learn the mindset and the practical steps to naturally increase the impact of your work while making space for your unique strengths as an introvert. Hi. In this episode, I wanted to talk to you about starting where you are. I thought I'd sit out here again outside of my little office cabin. It's my absolute favorite place to work. I like to just come out here and sort through my thoughts, my ideas, do some work, listen to the birds and the trees, and kind of let things sink in, especially the things that have happened in the past couple of weeks or years. In this stage of my business, there's a lot of development. I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. There are so many new things happening and you're constantly stretching yourself, which is a very, very good thing. But it's also good to be mindful of the fact that you are stretching yourself and that you're asking a lot of yourself. And if you have like a busy job or busy life in general, it's good to kind of take these moments to sit and to decompress. And I think especially for introverts, this is very important because being quiet and sitting, just thinking, is one of the main ways that we recharge ourselves. We recharge our energy and kind of release the mental fog that we might have, and it's also how we make connections between our thoughts and ideas and the new things that we've kind of that we've seen and heard and experienced. So one of the things that I'm kind of decompressing from is the last masterclass that I did. At the beginning of this year, I challenged myself that I was going to do a masterclass every month, which when you come up with it, it sounds quite simple, right? Just a masterclass every month. I knew it was going to be intense. You know, giving a masterclass can be quite intense for different reasons. But it also seemed quite simple. So maybe I was a little naive stepping into it. We are now at masterclass 6 that I did a few weeks ago. At the beginning of August now. And every time I do notice that I do need some time to decompress. And I was thinking over something that also came up during the masterclass, and that is the idea of starting where you are that I wanted to talk to you about today. So in the masterclass, I kind of explained my process for building it over those 6 weeks, but the process was actually a lot longer than 6 weeks, the whole process, because I realized when I started that I'd been thinking about it for well over a year. Some people might say that I was overthinking it, if you've never heard of that term. A lot of introverts feel like we're constantly overthinking things, and one of the things that we talked about in the masterclass, and one of the things that I help my clients work through, is kind of finding your sweet spots between thinking and taking action. And that sweet spot is a little bit different for everyone. Because introverts, we need so much time to think things through, we can feel like we're not taking action. But once you find your sweet spots, you can give space to that thinking process and still take action in a way that feels natural and that you still kind of feel ready to take that step. And I hesitated a little bit using the word ready because in a lot of things, especially when it's something new, you're never going to feel completely ready. I think probably we feel completely ready for things when usually things we've already done, right? That we know exactly the whole, all the steps, and we know exactly what's expected of us. And that's usually when we feel completely ready, and we don't feel that little twinge of nervousness when we step into it. So waiting for that moment to feel completely ready, that's sometimes when we start feeling like we're putting things off and procrastinating. But the opposite is also not very effective. Like pushing yourself to do something that you don't actually feel like you have a good grasp on it yet. And I see a lot of people doing that. It's also something that I was actually taught to do. That phrase, you need to get out of your comfort zone, right? You need to, growth only comes from discomfort. Those types of phrases always make me feel like, okay, I kind of need to feel uncomfortable. And discomfort to me oftentimes actually feels like anxiety. I don't know if you recognize that. But anxiety is not a good thing in the sense that you shouldn't feel anxious to do things all the time, in my opinion. There is a little bit of nervousness when you do something new. You will never feel completely ready. But as soon as you feel like there's really anxiety, there's like a knot in your stomach or something. For me, it's around my throat. It feels like I'm being suffocated. That's a signal telling you that something's not quite right yet for you. And it doesn't mean that you can't achieve great things. It doesn't mean you can't take amazing steps. I mean, when people look at me, they think, oh my God, she's doing all these things. You know, like someone said to me, you're still doing something new now with this new business. You already had this amazing career as a scientist. To me, that it feels very different, right? On the inside, it feels very different than what people see from the outside. So making space for the way that you naturally work, your natural process, your quiet nature, all those things can go together with taking this action. And I think the magic happens when you find your sweet spots. So when you kind of get a sense of, okay, these are the phases that I go through when I'm doing something new. And they're different phases. I mean, if I would describe it in a general way, most of us always go through this initial exploration phase where you're just kind of trying out different options and seeing what fits, seeing what you like. You'll branch out. It will be quite wide. And that's what I was doing like in the first year that I was thinking about the podcast. I was just reading books, reading articles, listening to other people's podcasts and things like that. And then you get to a stage that you start connecting the dots. You start seeing kind of, you start seeing an underlying idea form. For me, that was kind of like, okay, what would the podcast be about? Who would it be for? Those types of questions start getting answered. That's the connecting the dots phase. And for a lot of people, well, I can't say for everyone. I mainly work with introverts, but I suspect that it's the case for probably for everyone. That at some point when you're very clear on what it is you're trying to achieve, a path will appear somewhere. Sometimes it's the whole path. You know, for some people, they can see from A to B, like all the steps they need to take to get there. But other people have a different working process. And for them, it goes in steps. It's more iterative. You know, and every step they take, they kind of collect more information, and their endpoint, like B, becomes more clear. So once you realize what your natural process is and the sweet spots that you have between like the thinking exploration phase and then the path that's appearing that you can take those steps, you can still feel very comfortable taking on new things that you've never done before, and kind of building on that to take subsequent steps towards a bigger goal. Sometimes things you couldn't have imagined when you started, which is kind of how I feel on this journey with this new, with my coaching business. Because when I started, I just had this idea, okay, I'm just going to find myself a client a month and just have these one-on-one sessions. And from that initial idea, it has grown into something much bigger that includes this podcast, and it includes online courses, and it includes like building a community of introverted entrepreneurs who want to lift each other up. And it's still kind of developing. But so bringing it back to that idea of starting where you are, and I touched on a few of these things when we're talking. Like, we always see the highlights from the outside, right? And we think everyone is doing such amazing things, and it looks so easy for other people. Whereas in reality, we don't see everything that's at the back end, that's behind the scenes. And this is why I love to do like behind the scenes masterclasses, to show my process and the things that I ran into that didn't go as well or didn't go according to plan. And in context of the last masterclass that I did around the podcast, I realized that I did feel kind of stuck at some point. And that was one of the mistakes that I made, was comparing myself to other people who have podcasts out there. I follow a lot of coaches that are like 10 or 20 years from where I am. And podcasting is super hot right now, right? So if people are launching a podcast, a lot of them are launching it like super big. They have like this entire thing around it, this amazing messaging, thousands of downloads in the first week or even days. So on some level, I was comparing myself to that, thinking that, okay, I don't see how I could achieve something like that right now. And if I don't do that, then it's not a podcast. And that was one of the reasons that I kind of felt unable or incapable, maybe even, to start a podcast. But I'm at a completely different stage of my business, right? I'm just starting. In October, I'll be celebrating the 2nd year of my business officially. They have a lot more resources, right? They're like 10, 20 years into their business. They have a lot of marketing that they can put behind it. They have an entire team sometimes working on it. And I'm just doing everything myself right now. Of course, I get help here and there where I need it. Like with the music of the podcast, I knew not my strong suit. So I got someone who specializes in music to do the intro for me. But I do part of the editing myself right now. And I also combine things with my family life, working only 3 days a week. There are different things that you can achieve in that context. So starting where you are is so, so important. I think in any stage of your business, but also around things that you want to achieve in your life in general. When we're talking about habits, when we're talking about managing your time, when we're talking about creating a lifestyle that you really, really love. All of these things, I think it's really important to start where you are and to kind of think, okay, what do I need in my context and with everything that's going on for me right now? And once I was able to do that for the podcast, it became much easier because I was able to kind of let go of that. You need to have this huge launch, so to speak, for it to be valuable. But no, I can give value even when I don't have that. I can give value in a smaller context in that way. If one or two people see this message and it resonates with them, that's already like the biggest value that I could give. Looking at what your context and starting where you are, it can be much more effective to adjust your expectations for that. And I'm not saying aim low, okay? Let's not misinterpret this. I'm saying be realistic with what it is that you want to achieve, what's important to you. Not just for your work, but also for your personal life. I'm curious, is there a change that you're working up towards, or is there something that you would like to learn maybe? And what could help you to make that shift to start where you are? Maybe if you're comparing yourself to other people, or you feel this barrier that, oh, I could never do that, or I don't feel ready to take that step, right? And we already talked about you're never going to feel completely ready, but there are things that you can do, like finding your sweet spot, to be able to still take steps towards that goal without feeling anxious or overwhelmed. So what's something in your life right now where you feel this kind of tension? I want to take this step, but I'm not quite sure how. Does it help you to think about it in that way? Okay, if I just start where I am, what's a small change that I could make? Thank you for listening, and let's talk again next week. Thank you for listening to the Productive Introvert Community Podcast. If you're an introverted entrepreneur and you're ready to thrive in your own way, then connect with me on thefrankermessage.com/contact.